Have you ever wondered how an unexpected meeting can change the lives of two people? That's what we'll see in today's story. Come with me and discover Audrey and Paul's exciting story, full of challenges, true love, and overcoming. Let's go. Audrey woke up that morning full of excitement because she had a big day ahead of her. She had finally been called for a job interview at the prestigious advertising agency. It was her big chance to become a graphic designer. On the way, she bought a coffee and walked to the subway, balancing her coffee, her bag and some folders with her best work to present at the interview. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a volleyball came hurtling towards her, causing the coffee to spill all over her jacket. The bag and folders fell to the floor, scattering papers everywhere. Audrey looked down in horror as coffee dripped down her impeccable outfit. All her carefully laid plans for the job interview were falling apart right before her eyes. She raised her head, ready to let out her frustration in a vent, but her words vanished at the sight of a tall man with sparkling eyes and a mischievous smile. What a mess, said Paul with a playful tone, holding out his hand to help her up. His fingers touched hers, and Audrey felt a shiver run down her spine. I didn't mean for this to happen, said Paul, offering to help her up. She accepted, although her eyes still shone with indignation. You should pay more attention to your surroundings. And maybe control your volleyball shots, as she retorted firmly. Paul raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by her frankness. That goes for anyone who's been distracted by coffee around here, he replied with a smile. Audrey was about to reply, but the distant ring of a cell phone interrupted the moment. She looked at the illuminated screen and her heart sank. It was the interview call. Audrey was one step away from losing the chance of her dreams because of that disastrous encounter. Paul, without hesitation, suggested an unexpected solution. Come on, get on my bike. Il take you there. She paused for a moment, doubt dancing in her eyes. But urgency spoke louder. With a deep sigh, she nodded and got on the back of the bike, holding on tight as he took off through the busy city streets. The wind whipped her face, and a sense of freedom mixed with growing anxiety. In a few minutes, they arrived at the company. Audrey got off the bike in a hurry, mumbling a thank you as she tidied her tousled hair. Paul smiled, a mixture of amusement and admiration in his gaze. Good luck with the interview, he said, speeding off and leaving her to face the biggest opportunity of her life. That unexpected meeting was just one surprise in her day, or maybe it was the start of something new. Audrey entered the building with her heart still racing from the adrenaline rush of the motorcycle trip. Despite the setback, she was determined to do her best in the interview. She greeted the receptionist with a nervous smile and was led to the waiting room. As she waited, her mind wandered to the strange encounter with the volleyball man. Who was he? Why did she feel so intrigued by someone so different from her? She tried to push these distractions aside, focusing on mentally reviewing her answers and remembering the key points she wanted to highlight in the interview. Finally, she was called into the room. She took a deep breath and walked in confidently, ready to face any question that came her way. The interview went very well, and Audrey left feeling that she had done her best. As she left the building, she decided to stop at a nearby coffee shop to reward herself for her efforts. As she sipped her coffee, her mind went back to Paul, the volleyball man. Did he often play on that court? Would she ever see him again? Suddenly, Audrey felt her cell phone vibrate in her purse. She picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. The message read, "I hope your interview was a success and that you managed to get the coffee out of your clothes." She was surprised. Was that the volleyball man? How had he gotten her number? A smile appeared on her face as she typed a quick reply, "Thanks for the ride and for your concern." The interview was great, and the coffee came out of her clothes. As the days went by, the messages between Audrey and Paul became a special part of their day. They discovered that they had a lot in common. Paul shared incredible stories of his travels around the world, while Audrey talked about her passions for her studies and her dreams for the future. Every message they exchanged brought them closer together, creating a bond that seemed to go beyond any difference that existed between them. Audrey began to look forward to the moments when her phone vibrated with a new message from Paul. She couldn't wait to share her experiences and thoughts with him. One day, Paul invited her to meet in person, and her heart soared with excitement. Despite some concerns about whether they would actually match, she couldn't resist the chance to meet the man behind the messages. They arranged to meet in a cozy cafe in the city center. When Audrey walked into the cafe and saw Paul, her heart leapt. He was so different from the men she knew, wild, free, and full of life. As they talked, they realized that the spark they felt in their messages was also present in person. They laughed together, shared stories, and discovered a deep connection that overcame all their differences. Paul placed a package on the table. Curious, Audrey asked, "What's this?" He smiled and said, "It's a present for the day I spilled coffee on your clothes." She opened the package and found a beautiful blouse, perfect for the summer they were experiencing. Audrey smiled and thanked him for his kindness, feeling even more connected to Paul. But something was still bothering Audrey. How had Paul gotten her number? He then explained that day, while helping to pick up the fallen papers, he had found her CV, where her phone number was. Feeling guilty for having disrupted the interview, he decided to send a message to see if everything had gone well. At the end of the night, Paul walked her home. In the moonlight, he held her hand and looked deeply into her eyes, making her shiver. "I know we're different, but I feel something unique between us," he said softly. Audrey confessed that she also felt something special for Paul. After all, he had made her ride a motorcycle for the second time, which was a miracle, since she was so afraid of bikes. They laughed together and, under the beautiful starry night, shared a gentle kiss. As she looked at Paul, a mixture of emotions ran through her mind. She knew she was falling in love with him, but the fear of the unknown still made her apprehensive. Yet, at that moment, everything seemed possible and magical. Could Audrey and Paul overcome their differences and build something lasting together? With a sigh, she decided to surrender to the moment and let fate guide their paths. She smiled and said, "Me too." In that instant, they both knew they were beginning a journey of love and adventure that would change their lives forever. As their relationship grew, Audrey couldn't help but wonder if Paul would be willing to make a real commitment. The image of Paul as a free man, always surrounded by beautiful women and living without strings attached, never left Audrey's mind. She tried to ignore these worries, focusing on the happy times they spent together. However, a shadow of doubt remained. Would she be enough for him, or would he end up looking for new adventures and thrills? Determined not to let this doubt consume their relationship, Audrey decided to face the situation head-on. She knew she needed to talk to Paul about her fears and worries so that she could move forward with more confidence. One quiet evening, as they sat together in the living room, Audrey plucked up the courage to ask Paul about his past and his current lifestyle. Paul looked at her seriously, his eyes showing a mixture of emotions. He confessed that his life before had been full of adventure and freedom, but that since meeting her, something had changed. He began to long for a more stable and meaningful life with her. Audrey felt relieved to hear this, but a small voice inside her always had doubts. Would he really change, or would it only be a matter of time before he went back to his old ways? As the months passed, Audrey began to notice real changes in Paul. He made an effort to be present in her life, showing a commitment and dedication that she never expected to find in him. Together, they built a partnership based on trust, respect, and love. Audrey realized that, although his past had been full of adventures, he was determined to build a future by her side. And she was willing to give him a chance, believing in the transformative power of love. Over time, Audrey's worries disappeared, replaced by the certainty that she and Paul were perfect for each other. Together, they were ready to face any challenge that came their way. They were ready to write their own unique and unexpected love story. As Audrey and Paul's relationship blossomed and solidified, something unexpected happened that shook Audrey's confidence. One evening, while they were having dinner in a cozy restaurant, Paul received an urgent and mysterious phone call. His face paled as he hung up the phone, and Audrey felt the tension in the air. Paul tried to remain calm, but she realized that something was very wrong. Before she could ask any questions, he abruptly got up from the table, mumbling apologies and saying that he needed to sort out a situation. Audrey sat there, worried and confused, sensing that something big was about to happen. Audrey sat, dazed and confused, as Paul disappeared through the door. What could be so important as to interrupt dinner? Her thoughts were spinning in circles, and a sense of apprehension began to grow inside her. Hours passed and Paul still hadn't returned. Audrey tried calling him several times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Worry and anxiety consumed her, and she couldn't concentrate on anything other than the uncertainty of what was happening. Finally, after what seemed like an interminable wait, Paul came home. His face was dark and worried, and Audrey could see the anguish in his eyes. When he found her in the living room, he approached her quickly, holding her hands tightly. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice trembling with restrained emotion. "I've received news about my past, something I thought I'd left behind." Audrey felt her heart race. She stared at him, holding her breath, prepared for the worst. Paul continued, revealing a deep secret that he had kept for so long, a secret that had the power to change everything between them. The secret he revealed was related to a debt of gratitude he owed to a family who had taken him in during a difficult period in his life. Audrey realized that, despite everything, she wanted to support Paul and face this challenge together with him. Paul said that this family helped him when he was going through very difficult times, both emotionally and financially. He was eternally grateful for everything they did for him. When he was a teenager, Paul was involved in a robbery and ended up in prison for a while. He hung around with bad company and made bad decisions, but he regretted them deeply. After getting out of jail, this family took him in until he turned 18. From then on, Paul changed his life. He graduated in physical education and dedicated his career to helping young people who were in the same situation as him. Paul explained that he had hidden this part of his life for fear that the truth would change the way Audrey saw him. He feared that, on finding out about his past and connection to that family, she would think he was still involved in the wrong life and judge him for it. When the secret came out, Audrey was surprised, but also deeply touched by the story he shared. She saw it as proof of Paul's humanity and vulnerability, not as a flaw. Instead of driving them apart, the secret strengthened the bond between them, showing that he trusted her enough to share his most intimate story. Together, Audrey and Paul learned to face the challenges of the past and build a future based on honesty and mutual support. As she assimilated the revelation, she felt a wave of compassion and love flood her heart. Instead of pushing them apart, the secret brought them even closer. Audrey hugged him lovingly, offering comfort and unconditional support. They knew they would face this unexpected obstacle together, united by the strong bond of love they had built. Audrey and Paul built a future together based on sincerity, mutual respect, and above all, true love. Their story shows us that love is not just for the good times, but also for the difficulties and revelations. They taught us that true love is that which remains strong, even when the going gets tough. It's having someone by your side who will support you and understand you, regardless of your past. Did you like the story? Like and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.